after The Northman, I have been in anticipation of this movie when it was announced that Eggers was going to make this movie. And, of course, we got to eventually see him.
Yeah, I did not think this actually would happen. I felt like this was going to be a case where he would leave the project eventually. And
something like that, right? Because we're so wanting to see
because he's been trying to make this for years, and thank God it's here. We both love the original Nosferatu.
Oh, hell yeah. We had to listen to film class. God, hey, yeah.
So how are we going to feel about this new one?
Let's talk about it. Eggers' passion project, now a big hit remake.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. Loyal fans, yes, once again, thank you for continuing to support the show. You know I'm going to say it with me. There's another way you can support the show. Join the Patreon. We have great deals, great content, and, of course, opportunities to tell us what movies we could review in a future episode with, of course, a shout-out to you as well. Guess what? We could talk about the original Nosferatu if you want it. Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Not anymore, Film Critics Association. Check out that webpage for critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. He wanted to make it since The Lighthouse.
So Ellen Hutter is obsessed with a horrific being that invades her every thought, an unholy vampire traveling to claim her.
Unholy is right, yeah. Okay, this is the kind of movie, somebody put on social media, this is the kind of movie that if you went in blindly in an hour in, you're like, William Dafoe's going to show up, isn't he? And he does show up with an hour.
He needs to, and thank God he has more screen time than he did in The Northman. My one flaw, more Willem.
I haven't seen The Brutus yet, but it's going to be in my top 5. I don't know about you, but this is the kind of stuff I eat up. I love this kind of stuff, and I know I've always enjoyed all of Robert Eggers' films, from The Witch, Lighthouse, and Northman. And you were a champion for The Northman. You thought it had far more accolades than it did. So I don't know. What do you think of yours?
What's funny about every Robert Eggers film is that I like it on the first watch usually, and then I love it on the second watch, and then I love it on the third. So my wife and I are going to watch the movie tonight again, and so that will decide its final placement. But overall, I thought this was fabulous, and what I think it boils down to is this does to Nosferatu what the 1992 Bram Stoker's Dracula from Francis Ford Coppola did for that. It feels like scaled back filmmaking techniques that we can use that are epitomized of that 1920s aesthetic. I think this film uses a bit more CG than the Dracula film ever did, but it uses it in a way that honors that time period in such a beautiful way.
Right, and it's very much, it's like I said after the movie, I turned to him, I go, if you didn't tell me this was Robert Eggers, just by looking at it, it's totally his staple. A lot of just set the camera like that, have the action sequence, totally invested with it. The beginning of it is fantastic. He goes there at the end, and he sticks the landing at the end, and like, oh my God, all right, yeah.
One thing I love about this movie, and I will say this is something that I think is my favorite part of how this movie came to be, is that how do you make a remake of a ripoff? I mean, to be fair, the 1922 Nosferatu is a ripoff of Dracula. It's a very, very good ripoff, and it stands on its own after a time, but it is Dracula. So what do you do? And I think the idea of further expanding upon Hutter, played by Nicholas Hoult in the film, further expanding upon Ellen, further expanding upon all these elements of what kind of distinguished this film from the Dracula novel.
Yeah.
Focus on those elements, because I feel like at this point, with this 2024 version, this character and this story stands on its own. It is no longer a ripoff of Dracula. It is its own thing.
And I love the presentation of your villain. There's nothing charming about him. Mm-hmm. There's not like
except that mustache.
Sweeping. Right. I like a vampire with a mustache, I guess. But there's nothing to take away that's charming. He's not has charisma. He's just villain incarnate.
Yeah.
And
this is
evil
incarnate.
This
is not your shining Robert Pattinson vampire.
No, I like the choice of making him burly, making him look like it boils his skin and everything. All of it just looks like you don't want to touch him.
Yeah, when you finally get a shot of the vampire sans cloak, if you will, and you finally see him for what he is, it is haunting, it is shocking, it is unlike any kind of depiction of the character that we've seen. It doesn't feel like they're ripping off Count Orlok from the 20s version. There's certain elements that are similar, the bald face and everything
and the
like that.
Elongated fingers, I feel fairly authentic. I love costuming. I like the design that kind of homage to the original. The arc, very much like the old castle. It looks old. Set production design, top notch.
Well, so the exterior of Orlok's castle is actually, I think I'm going to say it probably wrong, but it's Hunidora or Corvin Castle, which was an actual castle in which Vlad the Impaler was imprisoned at one point. So it does kind of, again, harken back to that Dracula-ness of the whole character. Yeah. But it is, again, something unique that really looks gorgeous.
Yeah, and I think wonderful casting. Rosalie Depp?
Yep.
Cast very well. This doe-eye sacrificed deer to this, lamb.
So I think she does a very good job. I was heartbroken when Anya Taylor-Joy had to exit this film. I was destroyed because that was like the epitome of who I would want to play Ellen Hutter. I think Lily Rose Depp does a strong job because most of her performance is gyrating, insane, mad, freak out moments, and she does it well enough that you don't get tired of it.
No. There's one scene that she goes way overboard, and I like Eggers encourages that. He encourages the movie.
It reminded me of The First Omen during.
Oh God, I was gonna say
film.
Where go catatonic and drilling spit all over the place, and your eyes roll back in your head, and I was like, this is The First Omen. Well, but it takes away from the movie Possession too.
Yeah, it's been very much a year of physical performance where like your body is doing the acting for you. We saw it again with The First Omen. We see it with this film. We saw it with Emilia Perez. Most of the people performing that film are performing with their bodies first and then with their voice. And I think this is another case where Lily Rose Depp, I think, has the hardest character to play. I think she comes out, well, maybe outside of Orlok himself, but she comes out really shining with that too. I do want to highlight one person who's not going to get any accolades, and I think it's a crime. I think Simon McBurney, who plays Herr Nock, the essentially the Renfield character, if you will, the one who's the boss of Hutter.
Well, he gives it all, man.
I think he is literally like shot for shot, just like pulling that Nock character from the 20s version, because he's one of my favorite characters in the 20s version too. Simon McBurney is elevating on another level everything.
Well,
with that
don't we have another actor that was in The First Omen that was actually
Ralph Ineson, who has worked with Eggers on at least The Witch. I can't remember if he was in the
well, you'll recognize his voice,
Northman
man.
or not.
Yeah.
Ralph Ineson, who is basically like, you put him in a movie, I'm going to see your movie at this point. He is probably, next to Willem Dafoe, the person I was most excited to see in this film was Ralph Ineson.
Utterly fantastic. I highly recommend it. It's a very risky thing to do a remake of a ripoff, right? Mm-hmm. Especially a classic that I had to watch for film class, and a lot of people eventually it's required viewing for film class. And there's a very much touches of homages. The hand over the town, the shadow of the hand, the creepiness of his shadow going up. So it's a lot of the structure, everything. I think it's 100%. Everything was spot on.
And again, the focus on elements that aren't traditionally used in other Dracula versions, like the rat's plague, which was again part of the Nosferatu 20s film, was the discussion of this plague that has entered the area. And I think that's a very haunting way. Of course, we do have some plague stuff in other Dracula films, but not to the extent that I think they went with this one. I mean, I think there's a scene where Willem Dafoe is in a...
And it doesn't look...
crypt with like 2,000 rats, and it's like, that feels it.
There's nothing that takes me out that feels like it's CGI. There's some elements of Gladiator 2 that feels so CGI.
I would say the only part where I was noticeable CGI was there's two sequences where they're rowing the boat under the bridges as night falls, and that you can kind of see a little bit of extra sheen on everything. There's kind of a shine to everything, and I just think that kind of stands out. But again, these are like nitpicks with an overall great movie. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna look for nitpicks because we loved it so much.
But this feels like black and white, and it's in color. This feels like a black and white movie, but it's in color, and it's not a lot of blood, but you get some at the end. You get all at the end of it. Yeah,
and so for me, I've always loved the 1922 Nosferatu film. I've enjoyed it. I've owned multiple copies where it's like, I'm going to buy it again because it's a better version, what have you.
But this movie, I feel like I want to see it again right away.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful that I have the opportunity. Again, we're the lucky ones. We got to check this thing out before it came out. They sent us screeners as well, so like we can revisit it again. But I'm telling you right now, this is a movie that, had I not seen this before Christmas Day, I would be here unwrapping that present.
Yes. And please give us a physical copy, movie people.
Yeah, if I don't have to, I'll buy 13 if I have to. I was not a fan of the 70s Werner Herzog.
There's a reason why I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, like I know people that adore that one. That one didn't work for me in the same way.
No, it didn't work.
So kind of going into it, I've got one Nosferatu I love, and one that I'm like, nah, not really on. This one could have gone either way, but like I said before, every time I rewatch one of his films, I love it more, and so I'm very excited to revisit this one already.
definitely in my top 10. It's gonna be in a lot of categories. Definitely production design, costuming, and cinematography, and of course picture. So
yeah, I would say of all the films, there are a lot of movies and a lot of really good movies coming out on Christmas Day.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. We have like Brutalist coming out too.
Brutalist is coming out that day. A Complete Unknown comes out that day. This film, there's at least 2 or 3. I think the end, the musical with Tilda Swinton comes out that day too. And it's like there's a lot of great movies coming out, but I do think this one, as of right now, stands it as this is the one I would go to.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. All right. What do you think of our assessment, Nosferatu, if you have seen it already?
Yes, and if you haven't.
Oh my God!
Let us know what you thought about the original in the 70s film. We avoided spoilers, not like there really are many when you talk about a remake of an adaptation of a book. So,
I mean, I will say right now, this is his best movie.
I can't say it yet. But I'm on the cusp.
I know you like the Northman.
Tweet at me tomorrow, people.
All right. I know you like the Northman very much. Yeah.
It's hard to tell because I think he's like a world of like 4.5, 5-star movies, like all across the board. So I'm having a lot of trouble, but I love this movie. Yeah. That's all I can really say. So let us know your thoughts on it once you've seen it down below.
Sure.
Your excitement level, your thoughts on the original films. And do you think they stand apart from the Dracula films? We'd love to hear about that as well.
Of course.
Thank you so much for joining us for another
episode
of
Remake
on Film. You can check out a couple other Nosferatu-related things over on my website, goatfilmreviews.com.
And stay up and watch movies to the first cock crows.